Like, this is ridiculous. One that I created, for sure. This is for UCSD. For who? Oh my god. That was good. Yeah.
Have the best handwriting, so I'm just going to verbally read it out loud for you. Public school systems would be more academically successful if they were more fun. Again, public school systems would be more academically successful if they were more fun. If one of our judges wants it physically written down, I do have a piece of paper, but I only have the one piece of paper. So that's all they handed us. Oh, it's just. Also, if our judges just like raise their hands so we know who they are. Are our judges here? So it's you three lovely ladies in the back? So, alrighty, great.
Just three. Is it just three?
Just three judges.
Alright.
Well, it is that.
Yeah.
Let's start with a hearty round of applause for everyone. Okay, just to double check for the ballot. So on NAG, we have UCSD, Jacob Blair, and Brian Masse. Awesome. And then for ACT, we have LSU Shreveport, Kaleb, and Heidi.
That's exactly right.
If you could ask one question, judges, I apologize. I'm a big knocker in debate. Are any of you opposed to it? Because I'll not do it if anybody doesn't like it.
I mean, I would prefer we're not like doing that while we're speaking.
Okay.
So
absolutely.
We're not saying this, but I would say not use the word a parley thing in my mind, not a text thing.
Gotcha. That is okay. All right, 4 minutes on the clock. Is anyone not ready? All right, everyone's ready? Starting now. I had a pretty fun education. And I hope it's not too braggadocious of me to say that I think I'm pretty academically successful as well. And what a lot of people generally don't really understand is how crucial fun is in your academic success. And that is why I am proud to affirm the resolution today. Public school systems would be more academically successful if they were more fun. So what I'm talking about here today, I'm going to give you some top case, give you a wet, and then give you 3 contentions as to why you should side with the affirmation today. So first off, we're looking at public school systems are defined as government-funded systems. They're not systems, but schools that have K through 12 education. Essentially, they provide education to kids. School systems, public schools. Would be is saying that if these schools prioritized more on student fun, they would be more academically successful. Academically successful being defined as EPSCO by fulfillment of academic goals set up by students, teachers, and educational institutions, typically but not always measured through grades and test scores. I'll get a little bit more into what that means later. And if there were more fun being defined by Oxford as focused on enjoyment of, specifically the students here. So you're saying that students would be more successful if the schools focus on their enjoyment as they're in school. And the language from today is more true than false. If you believe it's more true than false, this, public schools would be more academically successful if they focus on student fun. That is a reason to side with the affirmation today. So now, what defines academic success? I've given you a definition, but I want to zone in on that really quickly. From the Atlanta Metropolitan State College, it says that academic success is defined by 3 main metrics. 1, being high grades, but 2, skill acquisition, and 3, a student's personal growth. I'll show you how this fund prioritizes every single one of those. First mention, high grades. From the NDG Science Learning Journal, it's found that enjoyment is linked to higher academic success. And people who enjoy school, looking at K through 12 education, are 64% more likely to get an A. So when you're looking at those letter grades, you see students who have fun, they're doing well. But also from the Hun School of Princeton in 2025, they learned that enjoyment and learning enhances memory by increased activity in the amygdala region of the brain, which boosts memory and is linked to better test scores and better grade results. I'm going to take off this hat quick. So now then we go to our second mention, talking about skill acquisition. Because as you're in school, you want to learn different things. You want to have the knowledge to prepare you for later on in life, get skills. And from January 2026, a New York labster, it says that fun can help memory, dopamine and feel-good neurotransmitters released, which helps memory stimulation. Whenever you do fun things, it releases dopamine into the brain, and then it associates those, it builds those neural pathways, so you'll have better memory, learning new skills. But also from Princeton, we see that the neuroscience of learning shows us that enjoyment positively impacts academic achievement, and whenever people enjoy something as they do it, they're more likely to be better at it. They're going to develop that skill quicker. And so you see that skill acquisition is very heavily tied to fun. The students will learn more if they're having fun as they learn. And then that leads us to the third mention, personal growth, because you want students to succeed on a personal level as well. And from the Harvard Gazette, we found in 2019 there was a 15-week study between 2 different groups. One of them had a fun classroom. They had gamified learning methods such as taught using games, collaborations with peers, a bunch of fun different activities and things they do. Whereas the second group just had a standard classroom setting. Now, things they learned were the exact same, the 2 different groups, but you found that afterwards, the fun group had a 20% higher exam score, but also, and more importantly, they showed further drive to continue learning and to seek out further studies. They were excited to learn, because education is about more kindling a fire, people wanting to learn and grow than just those test scores, and people are more excited to grow as well. But also, you see whenever from Harvard, people drop out because they're bored, and that dropout leads to things like drug abuse, and whenever people aren't bored, they don't drop out and lead to further issues down the line. Thank you.
Everybody good for cross? Awesome. 2 minutes starting now. All right, we're talking about fun, so I just want to really zoom in on what fun looks like. In your first contention, you're talking about having enjoyment and fun boosts higher grades. In the classroom, what does fun look like?
Well, fun can look like a lot of different things. It be, a professor like telling jokes, for example, during the lecture, or if he brought out like, I don't know, a paper mache volcano and did a demonstration to his class, that could be fun. Fun takes many different forms.
Okay, so prioritization of fun in the apps world is going to be like, maybe like physical demonstrations and like joke telling.
What's like fun in general? You want the students to enjoy it. It doesn't necessarily have to be like one specific policy we're advocating for. It doesn't say whether they should prioritize fun. Just if they were more fun, then there would be better benefits.
Okay, so if I'm like a professor and I start telling jokes and all my students are like loving it and their test grades go up, why can I also not prioritize at the same time like rigorous academics and like engagement like that?
What do you mean by like prioritize? Because I'd say like prioritization is generally going to be like the student's academic success, and so fun is a way to get that academic success, kind of like what the resolution is.
Okay, then let's move to the top of the case then, because I'm getting the way you're telling us to weigh this round is if we prioritize fun, meaning we choose fun to be the dominant value, then that has better benefits. But what I'm hearing is that the way you prioritize fun is just by telling jokes. So why can't we tell jokes and also like focus on like rigorous classroom instruction?
I'm not saying we're prioritizing fun. I'm just saying we increase the amount of fun we have in class. Again, the goal and the end goal, I'm not disagreeing with you, should be academic success, and fun is the tool to get that academic success, among other things. It's not like, you spend all day telling jokes and don't teach.
Okay. Well, we can move right past that. On the third contention, you're talking about like students that are bored in college dropping out. Does the same thing happen at a below college level?
Oh, sorry. It was Harvard, and I misspoke. It wasn't college dropouts. It specifically said high school dropouts. My bad.
I understand. Thanks for clearing that up.
Alright, I got 5 minutes on the clock. That's the first time all day. The only time. Anybody not ready?
Wait just a second. Let me know when you're ready.
Cool. This is my first time speaking, and also I'm just proud to be here. I just want to say thank you everyone for being here today. The top of case does look good. I would like to make a couple of observations here at the top of case. The first observation that we would like to make that in order to meet the burden of proof in this round, the affirmative needs to prove that schools can be more fun on a wide scale level, that they can somehow implement fun at all schools. And the second observation that we would like to make that in order to meet their burden of proof, they need to prove that schools right now aren't already fun, which is going to be a bit difficult. But before we get into that, let's get into disadvantage number 1, which is going to be called boo fun. Our subpoint A here is that fun is just inherently subjective. The problem is that on a student-to-student level, fun is going to be massively different. We also see cultural backlash is a wide-scale issue when we look to expanding fun. In many education systems around the world, having fun in the classroom is the antithetical idea of what school and learning really is. Once again, we're not looking at just American education systems or primary school. We're looking around the entire world. And when you have entire cultures in certain parts of Asia, as well in certain parts of the continent of Africa, that don't want fun in their classroom at all, and they would rather not have an education system than corrupt their education by implementing fun, you very clearly see that this would not help their academic success. Furthermore, we also see in our subpoint B that school is fun right now. Even if you don't like this ideology that fun is subjective, we can also say that school is fun. Almost everything our opponents have brought up is something that's implemented around school all the world. See, what's fundamentally missing from our opponent's case is that they tell you how fun is able to help students have success, but they don't tell you anywhere where there is a deficit of fun in the world. Primary systems are already fun. We already crack jokes. We already use papier-mâché volcanoes. And we see that right now, fun is already massively implemented into school systems. Furthermore, we can see that right now, Kahoot, one of the most fun things we can implement in school, is used by 9 million teachers nationwide. Not only that, we see in other cultures that fun is the preface that we need for education to be implemented. With that being said, let's go into subpoint number 3, which is that fun is inherently a moving target. See, the problem is that fun is something that is inherently desensitizing. We see this from Science Direct, that constant exposure to stimulus like entertainment at a young age decreases your attention span and requires you to need more and more entertainment in order to have fun. So even if we want to but show that we can create fun, the next generation of students will have a higher desensitized limit to fun, meaning that you have to go higher and higher. And by living by this ideology, we get into a world where in just a couple of decades, the classroom could be drastically different, not prioritizing academic success at all, leading our schools to not have academic success. Now that we've talked about fun in a whole lot of ways, let's go into contention number 2. Grit. See, we also see that right now the claim is that having fun is the direct sacrifice to grit. Our subpoint A, why grit is good, we see from Angela Duckworth, who did a decade-long study that shows that the power of grit, passion, and perseverance is the #1 indicator for successful students. She even cites that over a decade-long study with 3,000 schools in America, those who were noted to have more perseverance and more grit, having a rigorous amount of courses, not prioritizing fun, but prioritizing study, were able to outperform their peers who had higher test scores as well as higher IQs. It should also be noted that on average, students who don't have rigorous coursework in high school fail in college at a much higher propensity, which only shows that the academic success of students may be okay in primary schools, which it's not, but by the time you get to the collegiate level, you see a massive drop-off. Higher amounts of dropping out of college, higher amounts of failure, which also leads to this awful idea of students having worse mental health overall. However, let's look to subpoint B, which is how fun kills grit. We see from Psychology Today that overemphasizing fun can undermine grit, growth mindsets, and students' resilience in handling different materials will substantially decrease. We see that as you implement more and more fun and you lift up the trigger on having more and more grit in the classroom, well, students never build up these skills. This same study also shows that if students don't build this skill in primary schools, they will never develop it in their life. Because this is the formative years of their life, they need it right now. Contention number 3 is who's paying for all that. So when we look to the amount of money that is implemented, it should be noted that there's a couple of key ways that you have to implement this. First off, when we look to the United States public schools, if you want to pay for even a Kahoot subscription or take hours out of the classroom, this costs a whole lot of money. And when we note that right now, that there's $530 billion deficit within the American economy for our education system, it probably wouldn't be beneficial. But more importantly, subpoint B is time. 53% of teachers state that if they have to work one more hour of overpay or not getting paid, they will quit, showing that this isn't academically successful, but it's the breaking point for teachers. I stand open for promise. Am I good to start?
You know, 2 minutes on the clock. Is everyone ready? Starting now. So that was a great speech. Whenever you look at the idea of perseverance and the power of grit, so you're saying that you should be passionate about something to, continue it and to have success in the long term, right? You basically said grit, perseverance, and passion.
No, absolutely not. What the articulation there was that we need rigorous coursework and we need students to have something to Sorry, I just want to finish that answer. Students need something uniquely to persevere over and get past. And we've also outlined in that same contention how fun and lightning rigorous coursework.
So is like academic rigor mutually exclusive with fun?
Yeah, we made that argument in our case, and there wasn't really any articulation that it's not within your case. So yeah, we do see that from Psych today that overemphasizing fun undermines the rigorous coursework.
Is the affirmative position to say that we should put fun above academic success?
To be honest, could you repeat that question?
Is it the affirmative position to say we're going to put fun above academic success?
I'm gonna be honest, I think it is the job of the affirmative to prove what fun even looks like, and I don't think that's been met. I think what we prep for is the negation, is that fun has to come at the cost of something, whether it's like dollars of resources or hours of time, and so that does have to be put above something.
Okay.
But that just comes from the fact that we don't really know what fun quite looks like right now from the affirmative.
All right, cool, thank you. So you're saying that we provided no examples of like what fun looks like in the classroom?
No, I think you did provide a couple of examples, but the examples that you give are already in schools, so that's already fun that's happening. We just don't know what more fun would look like, or if schools had more fun, how that would happen.
All right, so then do most public schools right now use things like Kahoot or paper mache volcanoes or these other gamified systems that we saw in Harvard right now?
Not only would I say that they absolutely have the most fun they've ever had, but I'd also say that our test scores in literacy are the lowest they've ever been.
Okay, no further questions.
5 minutes. When are you ready? Look good? Anyone not ready? Alrighty, 5 minutes. Now, judges, there appears to be a fundamental misrepresentation from the negative about what this resolution actually means and what the affirmative has to prove. They say that in order to have fun, you can't have rigor. That's not the case. Fun can mean doing a titration in your chemistry class where you get to watch it change colors while also demonstrating that you understand how titration works. The two can and do coexist, and they don't prove to you how they can't coexist, because they can. They make this claim with zero evidence or warrant to actually back it up. And furthermore, they also like to claim that the costs of this fun aren't worth the benefits. But the resolution doesn't say that it's a good idea to have more fun in schools. What it says is if we did have more fun, they will be more academically successful. Not that prioritizing fun is worth it, but that it does have some benefits. So they're kind of pushing a completely different burden on the affirmative than the resolution actually says. And another interesting thing they say is that students need challenges in order to be able to learn. This is quite frankly false. If you don't have these challenges setting you back, then you're able to move so much further forward. Well, yes, it can be beneficial to grow past things. It's better yet if you don't have a hurdle you have to jump through to begin with. Because guess what? If it's challenging enough that you have to overcome it, it's challenging enough to set you back. You may be able to get over it, but it's faster if you just kept walking to begin with without backtracking. Now, going into their case, what this specific first thing they say is that some places would rather have no fun and no education than a fun education. This is entirely irrelevant to today's round. We're not saying that schools need to do this, just if they did it, there would be more academic success. So this entire 1A is completely irrelevant. And then there's point B, they said that we have to prove that it's fun right now. But the thing is, it actually doesn't. We have two main reasons for this. The first is that the resolution tells us it isn't. It says if they do this, not because they do this. If I said, if I wear a hat, then I'm going to win this round, that implies I'm not wearing a hat. So we can't really say that we have to prove that, but even if you do believe that, we explicitly show you a study from the Harvard Gazette that tells us that they compared the current system to a fun system, which means those two are not the same thing if they were being compared. So we do actually meet this burden. And then going down a little bit further in their subpoint C, they talk about how it's inherently bad because you need to spend more time working on it. But it's actually good because it's customized to each student. It's not a moving target. It allows for students to customize it. If you have a group of students who really enjoy experiments, then heck yeah, do that titration. If you have a group of students who prefer more making it something into more of a story or competing with each other, then maybe you turn that into a competition of who can do their math worksheets the quickest or whatever. There are multiple ways to make things fun, and they don't have to cost money. And they also say that it decreases attention span, but Princeton tells us that it's actually easier to pay attention. Specifically, when students are having fun, they're more likely to stay engaged, focused, and absorb and retain info more easily. So actually, there is direct evidence from Princeton telling us the opposite of this subpoint. Now, their second contention is grit, and they tell us about how you need grit, but if you're having fun, you're not building grit. I have two responses to that, and the first is that exact same Princeton study. It tells us that you actually do better when you have fun. You're paying more attention. You're more engaged. You do your work more, which is a demonstration of grit. So the studies actually tell us, once again, the opposite of the negative claim. And furthermore, we also have another study from the Scientific and Learning Journal that tells us who students who had fun and enjoyed school were 64% more likely to earn A+ grades. What does this tell us? It tells us that when you have fun, you do better, not worse. And they also talk about how fun kills grit. Again, it doesn't. They can coexist. If anything, fun helps your grit. It helps you be focused. It helps you be motivated. It helps you pay attention. It helps give you that drive to actually succeed when you're enjoying what you're doing. For example, my lovely teammate there and one of these over here both like reading philosophy. I personally don't have the attention span for that. But when you enjoy something, it makes it easier to pay attention to it, which is why these two are able to read philosophy and I'm not. Now, furthermore, in their third contention, they talk about who pays for this. But it can be free. It can be maybe having students compete with each other to do an activity instead of just doing it independently. It can be, instead of printing out just a list of math problems, printing out a fun activity that also teaches those same math skills. It doesn't inherently have to cost money in order to have fun. Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions, and I apologize, I'm going to jump around just a little bit. So on your responses to our contention number 3, you had some responses that saying like nobody has to pay for this, students can just compete against each other. When they're competing against each other, are they like at their own homes or are they at like school? Like how would this world work out?
Right, so the example that's being made there, it isn't necessarily specifically like you have to do this at home. It's just like instead of every person in this room has to complete a math worksheet, it's who can complete the most math problems on this worksheet in 5 minutes. That's something my older sister did when she was in kindergarten, and it's how she made one of her best friends and why she knows her times table so well.
Got you. And so if students now have to like play these games, they obviously need to be facilitated by a teacher, correct?
Yeah, I mean, teachers have to be there to teach. They're going to be doing it either way, regardless of whether they just say complete all of these problems or who can complete the most in this amount of time. Gotcha. It's a similar, if not the same amount of work.
And so would a teacher be able, like logically, be able to like give a lecture about times tables at the very same time that these students are also taking this times tables test?
Right, so, I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, I'm just articulating here that, would this not be an example of playing a game, like doing a times table test? Would this not be at the sacrifice of doing like a lecture on times tables?
Right, so like a new way to frame it that's more fun is, hey, at the end, we're going to see who can do the most of these, so make sure you pay attention. Students will be more engaged because they're going to have fun of it after. Because
Gotcha.
if they know there's fun coming at the end, they're going to be more engaged, they're going to pay more attention, they're going to learn more.
Cut you off, sorry. And if I, for instance, have a really bad fear of test taking and it's a really big anxiety-inducing thing for me, would a times table test like this be fun?
Right, so this is kind of like in lieu of, like, for example, the test in the scenario would be everyone has to complete all these problems and get them
If I
correct,
have
whereas the
fear of
race.
test like a lot of people do, would that be fun for me?
Right, so it's kind of making it less intimidating because instead of being framed as a test where you have to get them all right, it's a game seeing who can do the best.
This one's good.
Yeah. Everybody ready? Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Masse, and I'm going to continue the articulation for the negation in today's resolution. I'm going to start by looking at the top of case before moving on to the on case, or the points that my opponents make on their case. All right, on the top of case, they say first off that fun is completely compatible with rigor. Two primary responses. Number one, prefer the evidence of decades-long research that tell you no, they're really not compatible. And that when you prioritize fun, it's necessarily at the expense of rigor and all the benefits that come with it. Don't let them give you this like hand-wavy argument about titration to make you believe that these are compatible. The second thing is about titration. This is a great example of how fun is subjective. Now, I'm a computer science and political science major. I hated chemistry. Titration was not fun at all, and I can't tell you a single fact about titration, but I know I damn well did it. This shows that not only is fun subjective and it's not the same for everybody, but also that when you prioritize it, it doesn't necessarily lead to the retention that they're claiming. This is really important because one of their burdens in today's round is to show that prioritizing fun is even possible in the first place. And when it's subjective, when it's not universal, it's simply not possible. The final thing they say is that the AF's position is not saying that prioritizing fun must be good. I'm not exactly sure how that can possibly be true. Let's look at the resolution, which says that school systems would be more academically successful if they were fun. That means that if we prioritize fun, if we increase fun, that we need to see net benefits of that. Don't let them sort of shift out of their own ground and not stick to the position of maximizing fun. Because when, as my partner has articulated, we do maximize fun, well, a lot of bad things happen. Now, let's look at their case specifically. The main tagline of the responses is lots of warrants, but not a lot of logic. On the first contention, they say higher grades. But number one, this will be a turn because it's not for everybody. If you don't like titration, or more significantly, your culture and your way of approaching learning is fundamentally incompatible with fun, well, maximizing fun certainly isn't going to maximize your education. So at best, we're only giving these benefits to the few and not to everyone. And what's worse is that this often falls along cultural lines. Listen to what my partner tells you, that many East Asian students find fun and learning as antithetical in the classroom. By prioritizing it, you necessarily exclude them. The second response here, again, fun is subjective. You absolutely cannot prioritize it. But even if you don't buy that, it's already happening. We're talking about cahoots and teachers telling jokes and science fair projects and math competitions. I'm pretty sure all of those things are already happening because each one of us have all experienced it. The final thing is that even if you don't buy that, it's still a moving target. You set fun at one level, kids get used to that, and then they want more. So you raise the bar higher, and so they want that now. And so you raise it higher and higher. You cannot maximize fun while still continuously seeing long-term benefits. Next, on skill acquisition, they say that fun stimulates memory and that you develop skills quicker. Well, first off, this comes at the expense of rigor. Again, prefer the decades-long research that shows this. On contention 3, they say that it leads to personal growth, and specifically through gamified learning. No, what this actually leads to is hyper competition. In a report done by in a study reported by Medium, competitions and gamifying learning emphasizes those who can do competitions well and prioritizes winning above learning. It induces anxiety, stress, and the ugly side of competitions. And even if you don't buy that, it at least comes at the cost of more teachers' hours and working, which my partner has articulated will make them leave, meaning we won't have academic. As well, it overstimulates learners, meaning that you're not getting the benefits. And I stand open for cross. And remember that I have cross.
Anybody not ready? Okay, 2 minutes. But that was a great speech, but I actually have a couple of questions. So is academic rigor the same thing as academic success?
It's like the #1 indicator of student success as per this decades-long study. So
Is it the only indicator though?
it's the best one.
But is it the only one?
Presumably there are other indicators, but I'm sure just to preempt where you're going with this, fun is not a good indicator for all the reasons that we've outlined.
Gotcha. How exactly?
Sorry?
How exactly?
If you're doing fun via competitions, then you're increasing student anxiety, stress, and feeling of like, damn, why do I keep losing? It also comes at the cost of teachers working more and more hours, which is, they have directly told us is going to make them leave.
Questions, not to cut you off though.
That's okay.
How exactly is it more work for a teacher to print out one worksheet over a different worksheet?
Okay, not to use too many personal examples. My sister is a public school teacher, and to facilitate a classroom competition is a nightmare because you have to deal with like the pairings. You have to make sure there's no like beefing friendships in there. You have to like oversee and walk around the classroom. It's like genuinely a big like burden on teachers to do this. It's an all-day activity. Not to mention you have to deal with the ramifications of students crying because they
More
lost.
questions.
Go for it.
If it's just like saying who can complete this sheet faster, does that involve pairing people off, making sure friends aren't fighting with each other? Any of that stuff you just mentioned?
I would say no, but now you're starting to bite into the benefits of doing this. At this point, you're just doing a worksheet, which I wouldn't really say is fun because A, not everyone enjoys worksheets, but B, like some students particularly hate timed competitions and would feel incredibly stressed to do what you're talking about.
Gotcha. I do have a few more questions for you here. So one last thing, again, do you believe that you can simultaneously enjoy something and struggle to do it?
Yeah, probably. I have to think about that.
3 minutes. On 2 for 2. Bring that nature training station. Thank you everyone for being here today. Now I would like to just go into off-case examples, but I would actually like to start at just one point with top of case, and I would like to reiterate one of the points I made in cross. See, our opponents have outlined that right now schools can be fun, and that schools are fun. They give us many examples that schools are fun. We also made the articulation that our literacy rates are incredibly low in America, and our math and English test scores are the lowest they've ever been, showing not only do we not see that fun is increasing academic success, we see a world where we have fun and there is no academic success. With that being put forward, let's go into responses. Contention number 1. They say how this example is irrelevant when we look to foreign schools. The articulation that we made is that if we start putting fun into these schools, or they somehow implement them, the alternative isn't like they're going to have more academic success. The alternative is their parents will pull them from the school because the parents' customs don't believe that fun should be put into the school place. A child not being in a school is not good for their academic success on balance. Subpoint B, they talk about how the resolution says if they were fun. Yes, this is why we made a prima facie argument, which says that the affirmative needs to prove that this resolution even makes sense. And it doesn't because schools are already fun right now. They haven't proven the bare minimum to even get us to the resolution. Then when we look, they also say, they have a stat that says this. They have a stat that says the current system was compared to a fun system. Once again, they have failed to give us a single example right now that is either 1, not already implemented, or number 2, is not extremely costly, costs a lot of time, or triggers a lot of anxiety for students, harming their academic success. Judges, I ask you, when you make this voting decision today, try and find one example that has not been extremely harmful to our students' anxiety, or would not overburden the teacher's time or overburden the school's cost when they're cut so low. Then when we look to subpoint C, they say how this would allow students to customize and have more fun. That's not how curriculum works in primary school. The teachers are the one that make choices. The teachers implement what is fun, so it's not unanimously the same for everybody. Also, you can still further on, they say how it would be easier to pay attention when you have fun. Yeah, that's the point. When you get to college and all you've known is a fun, easy class to have stimulus to, and you're able to go into a really boring lecture, well, you're going to end up dropping out and failing. You have to constantly keep changing. Then when they talk about grit, they talk about how individuals will have more fun, or will have better academic success when they have more fun. Once again, cross-apply the argumentation. A decade-long study that shows students drop out of college when they don't, or when they have too much fun into their classes. And also, you cannot have grit and rigor at the same time. We have a source from Psych Today that literally says fun undermines this. In contention number 3, I want to drop to subpoint 3 because we directly see in their examples when they talk about times tables. Number 1, this isn't primary school if I'm going home and printing it myself. Number 2, it's not fun. And number 3, time is still massively used and over hyper competized.
Right, 4 minutes. Is everyone good to go? Starting now. This has been a pretty fun round so far. Whenever we look at the top case, I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to go through my opponent's case. So first off, looking at the top case, they give us 2 burdens, kind of show that it can be more fun and it isn't already fun. They say it can't be more fun in the idea that fun is subjective. This is an example of spectrum fallacy. Just because one thing is subjective doesn't mean necessarily that it doesn't exist. An example is this round. Most people have been laughing at most of the jokes made here, and it's a fun round. There's a level metric to that, but also from the Harvard Gazette, in this 15-week study, 2 different groups, right? One of them like traditional learning education, one of them fun group. Fun group had significantly increased like test scores, 20% increase. So there is some metric to be made there. There is a level of objectivity, and then saying it isn't already fun, I'm going to get into that in their case. So first mention, boo, fun. My response, whoa, fun. So they say that, well, look at all these other societies like in Asia where, fun is antithetical learning. I was born in China. In China, there's a very, very strong academic rigor, and it leads to burnout and stress and anxiety. If you look to these Asian countries where they have this incredibly intense culture, those are the societies with the highest rates of like depression, anxiety related to academics. And so fun help get rid of that stress and anxiety. And they say that school isn't already fun, but 2 responses. 1, we saw that when we took a traditional classroom and made it more fun, we saw these benefits. But also from 2, Harvard, we see that 1/2 high school dropouts cite boredom as their primary motivation for learning. I wrote this in my first speech. But also, if school was fun, you wouldn't have these bored students going and dropping out and then turning to drugs, addiction, those sorts of things as well. So school, there is an issue with it currently. And like my opponent said, there are issues with like literacy rates, all those sorts of things. They say that fun is a moving target, and they bring up the idea of stimulation, right? When you have stimulation, but stimulation isn't fun. An example is the iPad kid. A kid grown up on an iPad, constantly playing these stimulating games, it's going to be harmful. But take a kid just about any age and say, here's a swing set, go have fun. They're going to enjoy it. Then there's the idea of that rigor and fun perseverance. Perseverance is passion, like builds perseverance. When you care about something, when you're invested in something, you're going to do that thing. You're going to have fun and you're going to care about it. And they say that rigor is fun and then fun kills grit. But they say that fun kills grit when you emphasize fun over academic success. We're saying that fun will increase academic success. We're not overemphasizing fun. That's what we're saying here. And then contention 3, who's paying for all that? My mom's a teacher. She'll tell you that one of the easiest things to do is to let students have fun. Whether that be turning on a Kahoot or playing like a National Geographic documentary about that sort of thing. It's cheap to have fun, and it's cheap to tell jokes, and it's cheap to let your students enjoy things. But also the idea that 53% say working 1 more hour, I'll literally quit. That seems like an exaggeration. Like, if I literally have to debate 1 more round, I'm going to quit. Like, do you think really that's accurate? Then going into some response to their case, they say prefer the evidence, but we've given you evidence. If rigor and fun were not compatible, then you wouldn't see the 64% more likelihood of getting an A when students have fun. These 2 things are very obviously compatible. And they say it's already happening, but again, you wouldn't see these benefits whenever you take a traditional classroom model and you make it more fun, but also you see low literacy rates, you see high rates of dropout, people turning to drugs, and so they say it's not already happening, and then they point out all these ways that there are issues and it isn't happening. And then they say that for medium, they give you these different examples of ways some people don't prefer fun. It doesn't necessarily have to be a competition, but also some people have their own personal opinions, and that's okay. But you can prioritize fun for the whole class as a whole. And as you've seen consistently, whenever you have more fun in a classroom, student outcomes increase. And so our opponents give you a lot of nice sounding words and nice sounding ideas. But whenever you look at what's really going on and you go through their arguments, it really doesn't hold up. And fun is crucial and it will increase academic success in the classroom.
Did not drop my pen.
Four minutes. Everybody right? Awesome. Still, Brian, still negating. Let's get into some quick voters for why you can feel beyond comfortable signing your ballot with the negation. First, we'll look at the burdens of today's round because two are really important. First off, our opponents need to show you that schools aren't already fun now, which they fundamentally aren't doing. This is the first thing they need to prove before we even get into the on-balance discussion of the actual case. All the examples that they provide you today of cahoots and science experiments and, God forbid, titration are already happening in our public school systems. Simply put, their examples don't expand upon it. The next burden that they have is that they need to show you that fun can even be prioritized. Fun is an incredibly subjective concept, and therefore, if you don't prove that there is a universal metric of fun, any attempt at prioritizing it is simply going to fall apart before it even hits the ground. So with those in mind, why can you feel really, really comfortable signing your ballot with negation? Well, the first reason is that our opponents have provided you absolutely no examples of objective fun that doesn't overwork teachers or cause stress in students. You can check your flow, but the main examples that we've centered around are like jokes, which can be like subjectively interpreted, but more importantly, like titration, which is not fun for everybody, or like more importantly, these timed math competitions or these timed worksheet competitions. On the one hand, these cause immense stress in students, and even if they didn't, they exacerbate the competitiveness of students and lead to a sense of failure or disappointment in the students that aren't winning. Or even if there are absolutely no bad effects for students, it's bad for the teachers because now they're responsible for managing an entire classroom competition, all the social dynamics that come with it, all of the stress that comes with it. And what we showed is that 53% of all public school teachers said they'll just up and quit if they're overworked anymore. We prioritize fun, teachers leave, we do not get any academic success. When a round is weighed on balance, the fact that our opponents have no convincing examples that stay to the end of the round immediately means you're signing your ballot with the negation. Now, it's not just that, because the second voter is no rigor. There are many ways where prioritizing fun is actively going to diminish education results. The first way is parents polling students. Parents of different cultural backgrounds are going to see that schools are prioritizing fun, realize that that is antithetical to their cultural interpretation of what academia and education is, and poll their students. This means that students aren't in the classroom. They aren't getting access to that all-important education, and they don't have the academic success that we're weighing this round on. The second way is child anxiety. We've already talked at length about how competition leads to child anxiety, but it also leads to child anxiety when your teacher is making jokes that make you feel uncomfortable or that you simply just don't resonate to. They say, well, we're making jokes in this round and everybody's laughing. That's not true. All right, then number 3 is the college dropout rate. This is perhaps the most convincing statistic. 10 years of a study finds that when you prioritize fun, students don't learn how to exist in a non-fun environment. So they come to college, which we all agree is not fun at times, and they're like, oh no, I want to do cahoots, no thanks, and they drop out. That's not good for their academic success. So by prioritizing fun, by increasing fun even more in our primary education, which is what the resolution is on, we diminish academic success later in their career. The final thing is that they have not met their burden of already having fun. Every example is already implemented in today's round. Kahoot, science fairs, blah, blah, blah. They're all there. There's no need to further prioritize, even if you believe it's good. Thank you.
Anyone not ready? No? Alrighty. Let's get this 3-minute-long stuff on the road. Now, judges, I want you to think back about what you just heard from our opponents. And think back to the last time you heard them speak. Because they said the same things. We already addressed every single point they made and clearly and effectively negated it. And yet they just bring up the same point again without addressing any of the ways we tell you it's not true. That's not effective debating. That's not a good way to prove your point, to just ignore all opposition and yet insist you're right anyways. Yet that's what our opponents have done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the two burdens they provided again, provide you the refutation they still have not addressed again, do the same thing with their 2 voters, and then I'm going to provide you with 3 clear questions, the answers of which will tell you why you should vote affirmative. Now, those 2 burdens I lay out at the start, they say that they aren't already fun, and that fun can be a priority. Once again, the exact same study, the exact same logic I told you earlier still applies. A Harvard study compared 2 groups. The first taught the way they already were. The second taught in a more fun way. If you can compare 2 things, that means those 2 things are different and can exist. So that tells us that, first of all, they aren't the same, and so therefore it isn't already fun, and second of all, fun can be prioritized because they did it in this very study. And yet they don't address that argument because that's the truth. We have met both of those burdens. And then the first voter is that there's no example that fun can coexist. Again, cite the exact same study I just told you, the exact same study I cited when they said this originally. They can. This statement is blatantly false. And they've also said that it's bad for teachers. Once again, the exact same argument I said earlier still applies and still has not been negated. Now, their second voter is no rigor. Once again, the exact same thing still applies. Princeton tells us that enjoyment positively impacts academic achievement. When it's enjoyable, you do better, you are engaged more, you have more rigor. Once again, exact same study still has not been addressed, still stands. Now I'd like to ask you those 3 questions. The first is, who has the evidence? The app. We cite you a million different studies that all tell you how fun increases your learning. It increases your grades. It increases your skill acquisition. It increases your personal growth. And none of them have been negated by the negation, which is literally their job. Their one job in this debate is to negate, and they have not. And that second voter is, what does the neg prove? They don't prove that it decreases or it doesn't help academic success to have fun. They're lost in the weeds about the costs not being worth it, which is not what this resolution says. It doesn't say it's worth the costs or that we should do it, just that it does increase. And that third question is, which would you pay more attention to? A lecture about the math of why a titration works, or actually doing a titration, watching it happen, and having your teacher explain it in real time? Thank you. I have a really weak immune system, so when I do, I get like super sick.
Strong.
Well done, everyone. Real quick, make sure we get, so first name speaker was Kaleb.
Yep.
Second app speaker was Heidi.
Mm-hmm.
First name speaker was Jacob. Second name speaker was Brian.
Sounds good.
All right. So finals, we will not